It's currently April 17th, 2026, and I want to go over my predictions for S&Box. So I'm going to quickly go over what I think is going to happen, and then I'm going to go into detail about why that happened and why S&Box is going to fail. So to start with, I think S&Box is going to have mostly negative reviews on Steam. I think the market's going to crash pretty quickly into its release as the market's going to panic. I think the player retention is going to be god fucking awful. They might get about 100,000 people peeking, having a look at the game, and then it's just going to dip and no one wants to play it anymore, and the retention's going to be dreadful. I don't know what that's going to look like, but probably sitting around maybe a couple thousand after the hundreds of thousands of people have left the game, maybe even just going down to less than 1,000. It's going to get pretty bad. There's going to be a bit of panic, and the storefronts will be filled with AI slop and like low quality games, and everyone's going to be complaining in the negative review section about how the game is laggy, it's clunky, there's no good games, and that there's no value here, and Gary's one is just better. So why do I think that? So here's a big what is S&Box? First of all, S&Box is what they call it, a spiritual successor to Garry's Mod. It's not a spiritual successor to Garry's Mod at all. Garry's Mod was a S&Box engine based in Source. It was a mod of Half-Life 2 Deathmatch. That's really quite fun because you can make anything you want, and it's really easy to script. All you have to do is go into the Lua files, create a Lua script, and enable auto run, and boom, that thing's running automatically, and you can do a bunch of easy stuff. Lua scripting is really easy, it's really fun, and it's really intuitive. They made a lot of the complexities of coding in Source and put a scripting layer above it, so you don't need a code anymore, you can script, and that's a big difference. Instead, what they've done over to S&Box is that they've decided, while getting the Source 2 engine, in which they were given this privilege because of Gmod, and Gmod's success was only because of people who developed stuff on Gmod, but regardless to that point, they got this Source 2 privilege from Valve, and they decided, instead of making an actual spiritual successor to Garry's Mod, what they're going to do instead is make a game engine with Source 2. That is a fantastic idea. But the problem is that the game engine is really complicated to make games in. The learning curve is absolutely insane. So if we were to just make a game on S&Box, the learning curve is actually like, okay, I can make a slop AI game. You can generate some slop AI game and whatever. That's quite easy to do. But to actually make like a decent, fun, and engaging game that would actually give a reason of why you want to use S&Box, it requires a huge amount of time and effort into learning the engine and understanding what's going on. And if you had spent all that time in S&Box and learning what's going on, first you have the sunken cost fallacy, where people will defend the engine because they've spent hundreds of hours defending it. But the real actual problems of the engine start getting highlighted quite quickly. The engine is really unperformant, it's really clunky, and the base controls are dreadful. And to basically do anything with it, you have to recode everything they've done, all the base stuff. Just for example, S&Box, which is their your sandbox in S&Box, the main game mode. The movement is absolutely fucking horrendous. It feels like clunky and slow and unresponsive, and the content in there is infinitely less than what's on Garry's Mod. And an easy test you can do is you can spawn in explosive barrels in Garry's Mod and shoot them, and that is way more performant than whatever's happening on S&Box. And the main reason we upgraded was to have more power and more control in the new engine, and they've ended up giving us less control, less power, and a less performant engine than Source 1, which is absolutely ridiculous, because I want to explore more explosive barrels, not less. And that's obviously a very dumbed down way of explaining why the engine's unperformant, but it really is unperformant. Another example I can give on this is on the latest post, in which he was proudly announcing revoking 800,000 license keys he revoked, and only 40,000 kept them or something. That's a 5% retention rate, by the way, and that's probably worse considering most of people are just got cosmetics. So anyways, in that post, he basically said how amazing it is that he's actually gained double FPS in the UI, that I've made the UI performant. That's ridiculous. What do you mean you've made your UI performant? That's the most ridiculous thing. There's no performance issues on Garry's Mod with the UI. Why do you need to make the UI performant? What have you done that makes the UI unperformant? Do people using the fucking websites get lag? Like, what have you actually done to make it that bad? And it's because the engine is just so unperformant. And in that post as well, something very important, he doesn't say we've, he says I've. Pretty much, Matt has taken control over development. Matt's the head of FacePunch, development for Sandbox, and he's taken over development, and he just ignores users' feedback. There's many cases where PRs on the GitHub that he made open source has just been ignored or revoked without any warning. He is such a crap communicator, a crap community leader, and someone who really doesn't give a fuck about it. When I messaged him these concerns, I kid you not, he told me who asked and blocked me. This is not someone who was wanting a successful game for the community. This is someone who wants to make his vision of what Sandbox should be, which is fine if it wasn't meant to be a collaborative experience of what he's trying to do. And if you actually underline look at what's going on with Sandbox, is that they're pushing cosmetics, they're pushing this market economy, they're charging the game for $20 and revoking everyone's access. They're wanting to make money off this game, which I know is quite obvious. Of course you want to make money off this game. But it's just so blatant of what they're doing. And Gary has not been seen for a while in this. And I'm pretty sure Gary himself is disillusioned with the project. They've probably had arguments between themselves. Just to think about the ego of Gary, that this guy comes along and says, I want things to be done this way and that way. Yeah, these two guys have definitely had arguments and have ego spots. And you can probably see that in the fact that Gary's not working on it on much anymore. And goodness knows, maybe there's past stuff as well. But the whole thing has been a total and utter mess. Honest to goodness gracious. The game itself has been collaborated only by people who are in an echo chamber on the forums, who actually speak close to them, and any actual real feedback is lost. Let me give you this big point of nugget. You remember how I said how it's so hard to make a game on Sandbox? People who have spent a huge amount of time on Sandbox have this lost fallacy thing where they will want to give positive feedback rather than negative feedback because they are wanting to get more privileges with FacePunch, and it creates this echo chamber around the developers where they say positive things when really it's not good. And the biggest one of these changes is saying we don't need a scripting language anymore because we've got a runtime compiler for C#. Hooray! Which is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. All you're going to do is make it super hard to make any actual engaging game on the platform, and it's going to deter people from making stuff. You're going to have some people who spend some time who are actually really talented making some cool stuff with your engine, but even they surely need to understand that they could have had an easier job making it in Roblox, Unreal, or anything than this engine. And it's ridiculous now that we've got to this point where we're going to release, and after years of access to devs so they could make a game, we've still got no real engaging game out there. It's going to release, people are going to try the games, they're going to leave, and that's going to stop people from wanting to make games. And there'll probably be a couple of really good games that they release that's probably engaging for a while, and then that's it. And they're going to think, well, what happened? What went wrong? And it's just a very simple answer of that they've made their game too hard to code in. They've made their engine too complicated. It needs to be simple, like Roblox or Gmod, where these models have worked in the past, where you need to make a game simple so that people can actually make stuff on it. Instead, they've overcomplicated the whole engine. They think more is better, which is not. You needed the simplistic things. I mean, you've added so much stuff to your game, but the Sandbox game mode is so bare bones and boring and dull and clunky and unperformant. I don't really understand how you could see that your base game mode with all these changes is worse than it is on Gmod. That is the biggest telltale sign that you have been doing something wrong. And because of the echo chamber, this feedback and this warning about what's actually going on has never been taken seriously. And they've gone down this path of scenes and of object-oriented and removing scripting language and all this stuff and trying to make it like a game engine, that they're going to lose the majority of the players who are coming over from Gmod or checking out this game because they're going to notice your game is unperformant. They're going to notice the game is clunky. They're going to notice the game page is just spams of people making shitty AI content. And they're quickly going to leave, and player attention is not going to exist. You have, by making all of these complicated tools for developers, have actually created a platform that nobody is really going to want to play on except from the couple of developers who want to develop games here and then get no players. Because that's the real value here, is that you've said, oh, but anybody can release their game on Steam. There's loads of fantastic games already on Steam, way better than exists on S&Box, and they're all made on different engines. You are not adding any value by moving these games onto Steam. There's already so many good games. This is nothing new of what you're doing. And fundamentally, to the core problem of this is that you have completely lost vision about what the game should be. Through development, you have jumped around, and this is why I'm hinting at there's definitely been arguments at Face Punch, because there's a lack of vision of what there needs to be. There's been a total echo chamber with the developers. Gary just keeps on leaving the project, getting disillusioned. Matt's a fucking asshole who thinks everything should go his way and putting I've in the patch notes instead of we've. So that's telling something, isn't it? So it's not a collaborative project. It's what he thinks things should be. It is just a disaster. S&Box is gonna dip pretty fast. It's not gonna have any player retention. There's no good value on it. It's honestly abandonware at this point. They've open sourced the game, and I think that's just their last ditch effort of like, well, if we don't make it right, one of you guys make it right, and they're gonna release it, get all the money, and then just move on. That's what, and it's sad because they had the Source 2 engine and they fucked it up. But there is hope. There is hope. If this game tanks, maybe that will spark some fucking ideas in their brain and realize, oh, this is a really bad idea. We shouldn't have done this. Or maybe they'll reconsider. Or maybe the community will get together, and when HLX comes out, we'll create a Lua API over that engine. And we can actually have the Gmod 2 we've been fucking wanting. Alright, anyways, that's my yap. 12 minutes of me yapping about why S&Box is trash.